it was bad. It was like I got here like 2016.
2016. Oh my God, you're that young. Oh, geez. Okay, well, we're having an intergenerational interview right now. This is good. Thank you. We're going to get right back to that conversation with Ángela Ramos. But first, I want to say, bienvenido to Latina Stream Queens. My name is Marga Gomez, and I created this channel to shout out Latina identified creators amongst us. From emerging to established voices. This is an unsponsored, unfunded so far, DIY, partly rascuache internet venture. We may never be that polished, but we're always going to keep it real. And if you believe in shining a light on Latina identified creators, now is the time to give that YouTube subscribe button a puñetazo. And don't forget to ring the notification bell so you'll never miss a future episode of Latina Stream Queens. Ángela Ramos was born and raised in Colombia. She has a long list of credits, and they include writing and performing off-Broadway, off-Broadway, the National Abortion Campaign in Colombia, the Nobel Women's Initiative, and Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. Let's do the interview. Ángela Ramos. First question, do you roll the R or do you not roll the R?
I roll the R. And I didn't used to do it before. And then as of a year, now I roll the R. Yeah.
It's a bigger decision because you have a name that starts with an R. I think it's more of a commitment, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And in fact, it's funny that you mentioned this because I have a friend and we're starting this production company and we're calling it Roll Your R's.
Oh,
Because her name is Rebecca Rivera. So we both have like a thing going on. Yeah. So it's funny that you asked this because we were just talking about this like a few days ago.
I have one R and it's kind of tucked in my name.
Yeah.
And it's about the only thing I feel that I can hold my own as a Latina because I'm really good at rolling my R's. In general, I have not rolled the R. Also because I don't want to encourage white people to start rolling their R's because they're just looking for an opening, right?
Yeah, yes, absolutely, absolutely.
And then they'll say my name back to me, and it's like this nonstop rolling of the R, and it's just like, no, that's not for you. That's for us. Let's talk about your project. You have a short film. Is it out? Are you in the process of making it? What's going on?
Yeah, we're currently in pre-production and we've rehearsed a few times. We're in the process of asking for grants and doing all that. But we wrote the script this year. I write a lot, but I never did it in this format. So it was exciting to do it. I co-wrote the script with my friend Rebecca.
Rebecca Rivera.
Yes.
Yes.
So we wrote the script thinking about the different experiences of Latinas in this like coming of age kind of like stage of our lives, and particularly thinking of like my experience coming, I was born and raised in Colombia. I lived in like a very different culture. I felt like the shock when I moved to the States when I was 19.
Can I interrupt as hosts do? Can you describe what it was like? I mean, 19 is it's young to move to someplace so different, or to move. I moved across country from my parents when they found out that I'm queer. I had those kind of Latino parents that they weren't P-flag parents. And 19 is it's kind of a cool age. I mean, you're old enough to hold your own. But I think from Colombia did you go to New York? Is that where you went?
Oh, I have a funny story because I got a scholarship. It was like a Rotary International, and they had this fellowship for international students, and they would bring 41 international students to Georgia because they had this whole exchange program in which they wanted pretty much gringos from the state of Georgia to have contact with other cultures because most of them wouldn't. So I got there with a scholarship. Yeah, I know.
That's like a
It's
mail
very
order,
weird.
a mail order Latinx experience.
Yeah, and I got there. I got there with a music scholarship because I went to study voice performance, and I got to this very rural town, southern Georgia, and that was my first year in the States. And it was like this, like I was like mind blown. I had been in New York when I was 17 in this like theater summer camp. Very nerdy of me. But then when I moved to the States, I was 19 and I got to that rural town in Georgia. And I think, I mean, that's one of those experiences that kind of like I probably will keep telling and everybody's just kind of like, how? Like,
Oh, you've
why?
got to make your next movie about that rural town in
Oh,
Georgia.
definitely, absolutely. Yeah.
Rural. What was the most rural thing you did?
The school had like the focus of the school was like this agricultural thing, right? But they had a great music department, which like in my head, like right, like didn't make any sense. And this school was part of like the larger University of Georgia, but it was like its own kind of thing. So all my friends, like I had a bunch of like redneck friends that they would have like things on like a stable and they would like bring like how horses and cows and they would have like competitions of all kinds. And I remember just being around all of these things and people talking about turf because people would like study to like to work on like making the turf for golf stuff. So like the most Republican thing ever. It was like a very weird. I always felt like, what am I? I remember the first 2 weeks. I was like, why am I? Wait, why am I here? Like, what's the purpose of me being here? It was a very, very different experience from anything that I've ever known before. But at the same time, I think it was one of those experiences that really like forged my character because I didn't know so many things about myself, and being in such a like foreign place to me, it just sort of like amplified everything. I was probably one of the 3 Latinas that I've met in that college because it was a very small college. And
Were there
so
any other people of color in the college?
yeah, there was a large Black like student population, but as it come with like Latinos, I think it was like, and like we knew each other because it was like 6 of us, and then 2 of my friends, one of them was Argentinian and she was in the tennis team, and the other one was another Colombian that happened to be in the tennis team, and then there was like this other Mexican guy in my music classes. I'm still friends with all of them, and it was just and so we would just like speak Spanish like because nobody knew
Oh,
what we were saying. So it was great.
oh. And was
Yeah,
there any pushback, like there
yeah,
is now
yeah.
pushback on that? Yeah,
Mhm.
because I think that was when was this? Are you talking around the
Oh,
90s,
it
the 80s?
was it was it was bad. It was like I got here like 2016. So it
2016. Oh my
was,
God, you're that young. Ah, sorry. I like so the 80s. Right. You
yeah.
probably
I was
were
like,
not even.
ah.
Oh, jeez.
No, I wanted to point that out because it was like I mean, it was rural Georgia, 2016, and it was this
Yes.
thing of like, yeah, it was just Trump was everywhere, like yardsticks everywhere,
Oh my
um,
gosh. And
Trump rallies and the
and there were all
schools.
those viral videos about racist people hassling people speaking Spanish. I don't like your Spanish show.
So it happened to me a few times while I was there, mostly when I was out. And the funny part is that, I mean, at that time, I had a lot of friends that were white, that were families were Republican. I have friends like that because it was just, and it was like a very, obviously, we both knew we were in like different sides of things. But then the first time that it happened to me, I was with this friend, and I was with her and her mom, and these 2 guys on this car shop. My mom called me, and I started speaking Spanish to her right there. And at the time, I wasn't really aware. Like I knew, but I was like, I wasn't really thinking about it like 24/7. until this happened. Because I picked up the phone, I'm talking to her, and this guy's, oh, and they all were carrying guns like at all times. So that was like another thing that became more noticeable after this episode.
Oh my gosh.
But then I'm there, and these two guys, after they hear me talk, they start talking to my friend's mom, and they start asking her, is she here legally? Does she speak English? Why is she here? What is she doing here? And then like I told my mom, like, hey, like I gotta go. Like this is not, so I
Okay.
I gotta go. And so I just like hanged up, and I'm just like looking at them like, are you seriously asking these questions in front of me? And then they were like like they were just answering them like it was nothing. And then funny enough, this one of the car shop
Funny.
had
It's just,
Fox
yeah,
on.
I'm enjoying. This is cracking me up. It's like I'm terrified. I'm terrified. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they put Fox on the car shop because on brand. And Trump comes out, and then one of the guys goes, yeah, when he gets some power, we'll get all the plagues out of the country. And I'm just sitting there like I had never encountered anything like this in my whole life. Because I mean, it was like, and when I went to New York, it was like New York. So I'm just sitting there like I have no idea what to do. But I knew that like my gut reaction was to stand up and like say something. But like something sort of like kept me in the chair. And I remember I got up and I wanted to say something. I didn't say anything, and I just like left. And then my friend went after me, and she said, don't take it personal. And I was like, you
What?
didn't, yeah. And I was like, you didn't do anything. Like you were right there, and you and your mom thought that they were like asking because they wanted to like what, like take me around Texas. Like I don't know what you thought I was gonna do. Like, so it was a very eye-opening experience in the sense that like a lot of things that I previously had an experience. Like I'm not saying I would have gone through it again. It was pretty terrifying. But after that one, it just sort of like kept happening like on and off. But at that time, it was like I have normalized it because it was this thing of like, okay, I'm here, like whatever. But there were points during that year that I would break down because I had no idea how to deal with this. And then once he got elected, it got worse. And Black
Sure
students were
did.
getting harassed, and just the feeling of not being able to do anything, and then understanding what other people go through because I mean, growing up in Colombia, like I was always a la más blanquita, like I didn't like even like realize any of that. Like then after I was seeing my own family, and I was like, shit, like I'm really white compared to them. And so when my mom went there to visit, like I fear for her safety in ways that I didn't before because my mom is very brown.
Your mom went to visit you in Georgia?
She didn't go there. She went to New York, but after having these experiences, it's like you're sort of like hyper aware now of everything that could happen. And the fact is that when I would open my mouth, it was because I was speaking Spanish. But then I was thinking of friends that didn't even need to open their mouths. It was just like their
True.
whole their only presence, was already putting them in danger. And this was something that I really didn't understood until it happened to me. So in a way, I'm grateful that that happened to me because it sort of I was just not aware of these things because back home, I lived in a very small town, like everybody knew each other. It was this thing of like nobody really, and then I go to this whole different part of the world and I'm suddenly a threat to people and I'm not quite registering why. Or so it was a weird experience, but I'm better for having gone through it.
That's the thing about being a creator and a writer. I think sometimes I didn't act. I didn't fix the situation at the time, but we also have the opportunity to amplify the situation with our work. Do you keep a journal?
I did keep a journal, especially during those first few years in the States. And I sometimes go back and read what I wrote. and it's like a whole different person, and it's weird how much your body goes through when you immigrate, and you go through all these different like experiences, how much like everything about you just changes, like your essence, your molecule, like everything changes. It's um
Your physical reaction, besides the emotional trauma, I'd have to say, what what is that Rotary Club about? Are they just like punking Latinos? Hey, let's find another way to support Latina creators besides the Rotary Club of Georgia. Why don't you hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell? And now let's go back to the interview. You have a podcast called Seshur. Is that what it's called?
Seishura, yeah, Seishura.
Seshura. And people can find that on Spotify.
On
And
Spotify, Apple, yeah.
yeah,
So the podcast, it was a limited engagement, 5-part podcast, and I did it in collaboration with WILF. It's the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, and they are the largest and oldest anti-militarist feminist organization in the world. Most of my writing early on, and still it's very predominantly, it's very political and feminist. This podcast is basically about the future of feminist peace and how feminist peace looks like. So many women in history, they've done badass, like crazy things, and they never get to history books. And
yeah.
this is something that's like persistent in like my writing too, of like finding out who my ancestras were. The podcast, so like the first part, I talk about my mom's experience with state violence here in Colombia, and then the second part, I talk about the connection between violence and drugs. The third part is about Operation Condor in South America, which was the CIA organization that installed a bunch of right-wing dictatorships in South America, which I was so incredibly angry the whole week when I was like just researching this.
I'll drop the link in the intro, but people can find this podcast. Again, it was a limited series and probably good for you because that seems a lot to live with. Let's finish up by talking about the thing I started, because I have a little bit of host ADD and I'm a Gemini, but I really do want to find out about this film, which is called, is it still called Like a Virgin?
Like a Virgin, yeah.
Okay. Have you cast it? Because, I'm kind of like a virgin.
Yeah, so part of my multidisciplinary range, as I'm also an actor. So Rebecca and I are going to be in a film, and then we're still looking for one actor. It's a short film, so it's about 17 minutes. And so it's
17 minutes. Okay. So I just sort of read the log line for the film. So am I giving away a spoiler if I say what the
no, you can say.
Okay. So the protagonist is 25 and still a virgin, and which is okay. And in fact, you wrote it as late in life, and my mother told me to wait till I was 30. So. And I took it past that. I took it even past that. Her friend is going to help her get laid. And that's all we know from the log line. And then the film is 17 minutes. I guess we just have to watch it to find out if she does get laid. Okay.
Yeah. But we did write it because in Colombia, sex, it's a very taboo thing here still. Like, if I remember being in high school, and this is probably true for other people in different countries, but I remember, well, I grew up in the Colombian Caribbean, so people here are very conservative. Everybody's like, all the guys are doing it and everybody knows they're doing it, but like, God forbid we find out the women are doing it. I'm like, who do you think they're doing it with? Like, who do you think is doing it? But that was happening. And I remember that every time a girl in my class, or like, whatever, would start showing any, hints of like, I'm growing into a woman, or I am being curious about my own sexuality, it became this whole thing where like everybody needed to talk about it. Like every time a girl would like, we would find out that she was a lesbian or bi, it was like everybody had to talk about it. Like everybody, everybody had to talk about it. And even when you went to college, it never really went away. Like it was this thing where like you were either demanded to be hypersexual, but then if you were punished for it. And then if you were not, like you were equally, sort of mocked for it. Like it was like this whole contradiction of things, which happens to every woman at one point, I believe. But I think that when I moved to the States, it was this thing where I got to Georgia, and most of my friends were people from other countries that were also there, people like that were from a different culture that I was, and everybody was like hypersexual. And later, I thought like, oh, everybody else like having sex or whatever. And then later I would have like individual conversations, and a lot of people weren't. There was a lot of shame in the people that were not sexual. And then like, from my experience, I like blossomed later in life. Like I never felt sexual until like later in my life. And so I think that this is never discussed. Like even in feminist spaces, I feel like we always tend to like, like be like pro, like sex positive and everything. But the other part is never discussed. Like, what if you're just not a sexual person until much later in life? And why is that? Why don't we see that? Because, for me, when I watched during the Jane the Virgin, it was like, oh, like, the thing with the abuela. But like, in the series, she was a sexual person. She was just kind of like keeping herself. But what if it's the other way around? Like, what if, you're just not that person, and, everybody around you is telling you to have sex and you just feel weird about it.
And are you living in Colombia? Are you visiting, or?
I'm visiting. Right now I'm in like a transition period of like, I'm applying to grad school. And then I came to visit my mom because I hadn't seen her in a while. And I just needed to be home. Like I needed family for a while.
Hey, I think that's great. They are having this thing here called Thanksgiving, when the pilgrims ripped off the people who were here. So a lot of people tend to go and see their moms and dads and weird uncles and whatever. So it's like, you don't have to apologize. Just because I'm alone and I don't have a cat, don't worry about me. I want to let people know that the name of your film is Like a Virgin. Tell us your website, socials, where people can just be your fans, because you're a lot of fun. Oh, aren't we? We just became Facebook friends, in fact, I believe. Yes.
Yeah, we became
Facebook friends. Okay.
Yeah,
and there's nothing more solid than a Facebook friendship.
But
website, can people write to you through your website?
Yeah,
no weirdos. Only support, okay?
Yeah.
If you're from Georgia and you're pissed off at Ángela Ramos just because you can't roll your R's, why don't you just use your inside voice and shut the fuck up? Okay, so where can they find you online?
Yeah, you can find me online in my Instagram. It's at Ángela Rams, SS, just because Ramos wasn't available when
yes.
Most of things I put there, like all links. There's a link tree on my bio, and so you can just click there, and there's a link to the podcast and probably to the GoFundMe that we'll be putting up soon, and all those fun things.
Ángela, you are my first guest. This is the first time I've ever done an interview show. How was I?
You're great. You're a lot of fun to talk to.
You're a lot of fun. Thank you so much for being a guest, Queen. And this has been the first episode of Latina Stream Queens. Hasta próxima.
Hasta la próxima.
Bye.